I'm working on a 2001 Buick, but this is going to be a generic video to show you the basic ideas of how to replace an AC clutch bearing when they go out, when they're making a lot of noise. This particular one has been grumbling for easily about a year or two. Not necessarily a good idea to let it completely go out because it can damage more of the AC unit. It can actually damage more parts. It can throw the belt, a couple other things. Let me show you what this one's doing. I do actually have the AC, the actual clutch part removed, but you can hear that that's not a good sound. I'll show you outside the car. And so this is a typical AC compressor right here, and you always have a bolt in the middle, so the easiest thing is you just remove the center bolt, and first we're going to remove the clutch. And some cars, like this particular one, it just pulled right off. There's a spline shaft that corresponds to the spline shaft down there. This GM car actually has a puller, so it would be something more like that. And so you have to, most AutoZone's checker or O'Reilly's or Advanced Autos, places like that, they'll rent you a free tool if you don't own it. But this just, there's threads, so this actually just screws in. And then this screws in until it pushes up, pops it off, and that's how you remove this part. The second part is a little more difficult. Well, actually this is probably the most difficult part. The second part is usually held on, and that's your main electromagnet slash pole. Well, this is your electromagnet, but slash your pulley slash your clutch bearing, and that is generally retained with a snap ring. Let's see if I got it in here, right here. So this snap ring, where you have to use snap ring pliers, is actually, so this was pushed all the way on there, and this snap ring was held right there to prevent this from sliding off. And most AC compressors are this way, where you actually just have to remove the snap ring, and then this unit right here will slide off. Some are not so easy. Some you actually have to get a little puller and pull it off. But if you rent a kit, it'll have, you know, from AutoZone or O'Reilly's or Advanced Auto, they'll have all the tools you need to actually remove this part. And now it's just a matter of, actually the electromagnet bolts down there. Now it's just a matter of pounding the bearing out and reinstalling a new $20 bearing. So I had barely enough room to actually get in there, use this tool, and pull off the clutch disc. And now I'm left with the bearing, and you can see the snap ring right there. So I'll just use my snap ring pliers and remove that. So got the snap ring off, and now the basic idea is this style just needs to pull right off. So there's some bolt heads right behind, and I'm prying in several different spots at a time, and I'm just prying at it, trying to give even pressure, but I don't want to pry underneath the electromagnet. So it's just a delicate balance of not damaging anything, but still giving even pressure in a couple different locations. Just a little bit on each side, just working back and forth. There it comes. And it is off. There's our faulty bearing. Here's the one off the car, and you can see, here's my new bearing. And so by quickly looking at it, I can see that on this inside edge, there is actually a lip. And on this outside edge, there was actually little push down pieces of metal that they use to kind of retain the bearing. So on this particular style, the bearing actually pushes out through the front. Like on this other style, it was actually just opposite. So you just have to look really close, where there's actually a lip where the bearing's been pushed in from the back, but they also have little teeny pieces of metal retaining it. So I just took the Dremel and just ground them down a little bit, just so I wasn't fighting when I push out the bearing. But essentially I'll just turn it over, get the new bearing out of the way, and we will just work at it. We're getting it, but I'll keep working at this and get this right out. So now it's flush, ready to come out. So I got something that'll support it. So I can drop the bearing down below. There we go. Now we'll take our new bearing and we'll take our old bearing. So this will distribute the load so you don't actually deform your new bearing. And we'll actually put our old bearing on top of our new bearing. Or if you didn't have your old bearing, use a block of wood. But then you always get to a point where you do need your old bearing. Now pushing it in too far. And are we all the way seated? Ah, we got a little bit more. And I'm afraid this might get stuck. So I'm going to use my angle grinder, just grind down the edge of this a little bit, just make sure it's thinner so I don't wedge. Well, I can get it back out. We'll keep going. There's enough of a lip in there I can get a screwdriver. There we go. New bearings installed. And now, right where they had it crimped, there's a couple different things you can do. You can actually just leave it and chances are it's not going to do anything. You can try to crimp down a little piece of metal again, or just do a quick little tack weld with a welder. Just tack it. It's just so the bearing, I mean, it's pushed in there tight, but it's just so it doesn't pop back out. But you could take a sharp chisel, get it right on the edge, and just bend over just enough metal, just so it holds itself, just so it doesn't back itself out. Or just leave it. Chances are it's not going anywhere. But listen to that. That's nice and quiet. You can hear just did a couple really quick tack welds. I just barely did them. Teeny little tack welds. The heat dissipates so fast that you're able to touch it instantly. I mean, that's just a psst, done, and that'll just retain the edge, and it does not damage the bearing. I mean, it didn't even melt the little rubber seal around there, and now there's no chance it's backing out. And if you ever need to replace this again in another 150,000 miles, you can just Dremel those off really quick, really easy again. So now the idea, I'm just going to slide this right back on, put the snap ring back on, and then just put the clutch plate right over it and drill it right back down. There we go. It's all back together. Not the hardest job in the world, but also not the easiest. The biggest thing you'll run into is whether or not you can actually access the front of your AC compressor, whether or not you have at least 3 inches of room. If it's on the top, it'd be easier. I didn't have to disconnect any AC lines. I didn't have to do any of that. You might get lucky if yours did have something really close tolerance to actually be able to just remove the mounting bolts and move it in a position where you could access it. The bolts on the front, because the whole AC pulley likes to turn, are much easier to use. An air impact wrench, because you're able just to zip them off really fast. You don't have to worry about holding actually the AC compressor. But overall, I'd say it would be a job I'd advise anybody that if they change spark plugs, I would advise them they could probably do this as well. But thanks for watching. Don't forget to thumbs up, rate, and share. And don't forget to check out my channel or check out any of these 3 videos I place right after this. Thanks, guys. See you soon. Bye. And subscribe. Why not?